Take something like Predator mixed with RoboCop, then place it inside a modern military survival story about trauma, endurance, and advanced warfare, and you get very close to what War Machine 2026 feels like. From the very beginning, there is a strange sense of recognition. Not because the film is poorly made, not because it lacks scale or ambition, but because so many of its core ideas seem to come from places that cinema has already explored very successfully in the past. And this is exactly what makes War Machine such an interesting film to talk about, because on one hand it delivers strong visual spectacle and intense action sequences, but on the other hand it constantly reminds you of stories that once felt more original, more dangerous, and more emotionally grounded.
You one ugly motherfucker.
The film quickly establishes a familiar scenario. A group of soldiers is deployed into a hostile environment where the mission begins to collapse and survival becomes the only objective. The enemy is technologically superior, unpredictable, and often unseen, which immediately creates tension. But this structure is almost identical to what Predator achieved decades ago. In that film, the jungle itself becomes a psychological trap. The characters slowly realize they are being hunted, and the story evolves from military confidence into raw fear. War Machine follows a very similar path, replacing the alien hunter with advanced mechanized threats and futuristic warfare technology. What makes Predator still stand out today is the simplicity and clarity of its tension. The characters behave like trained soldiers, they take cover, they react with urgency, they make tactical decisions. In War Machine, some viewers felt that this realism was weaker. Despite being presented as elite military personnel, certain characters make questionable choices, such as standing exposed during combat situations or reacting slowly under pressure. These moments do not destroy the experience, but they slightly reduce the credibility that survival-focused action films depend on. Another point of comparison comes from the emotional structure of the story. War Machine spends a significant amount of time building dramatic backstories and internal struggles, particularly around themes of loss and personal trauma. This approach aims to make the characters more relatable, but for many viewers, the execution feels predictable. Instead of discovering emotional depth organically, the film sometimes signals it too directly, using music cues and dialogue that clearly guide the audience on how to feel. This is very different from the emotional tension in Predator, where character psychology emerges naturally through pressure and conflict rather than exposition. In War Machine, the emotional beats are more visible, more deliberate, and occasionally feel like standard modern blockbuster storytelling. However, it would be unfair to ignore what the film does well. Visually, War Machine is impressive. The scale of the battlefield scenes, the sound design during combat sequences, and the presence of large mechanized threats create moments of genuine intensity. When the action fully takes over, the film becomes engaging and fast-moving. Explosions feel heavy. The environment feels dangerous. The sense of constant threat is maintained effectively during several key sequences. Some viewers even compared the spectacle to Independence Day in terms of large-scale destruction and overwhelming technological force. The difference is that War Machine keeps the perspective grounded within the soldiers rather than shifting into global disaster storytelling. This choice helps maintain focus, even if the narrative itself feels familiar. There is also a clear influence from modern streaming-era action cinema. The pacing shifts dramatically once the central threat is revealed, moving from slower dramatic buildup into almost continuous combat escalation. This creates momentum, but it also reinforces the feeling that the film is prioritizing intensity over originality. And this brings us to the central question. Is War Machine expanding the legacy of films like Predator and Independence Day, or another familiar military action movie that audiences have already experienced in different forms? Because at times it feels less like a single clear inspiration and more like a combination of several well-known ideas blended together with updated technology and modern production scale. The answer probably lies somewhere in between. The film does not reinvent the genre or introduce radically new storytelling directions, but it does succeed in delivering solid entertainment and visually impressive moments. At its best, War Machine feels like a modern tribute to survival-based science fiction action films. At its weakest, it feels like a reminder of how difficult it is to create something truly fresh in a genre that has already defined many of its strongest rules decades ago. In the end, War Machine stands as a technically impressive and often engaging action film that delivers spectacle and intensity, but struggles to escape the shadow of the stories that came before it. It entertains, it moves quickly, it looks big. Yet for many viewers, it does not leave the lasting emotional impact it seems to aim for. And perhaps that is why the strongest reaction after watching it is not excitement or disappointment, but recognition. The quiet feeling that somewhere, at some point, you have already been through this battlefield before.